All right, my friends, let's talk about the USWNT national team versus Australia match. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like this video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe at your leisure. I sure do appreciate it. This was the third day of group stage play, thus conducting it, and the US came away getting the job done. They secured the second seed and thus qualified for the quarterfinal, and they'll play the Netherlands in said quarterfinal on Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern time. So for this game, they ended up drawing to Australia 0-0. And like I said, this game got the job done, but I have to say it was probably the most boring game I've ever seen since I started watching the USWNT national team. I want to say that this performance was by and large pretty uninspired. It didn't look like there was a whole ton of energy going around. There weren't a lot of chances created. There was a lot of really poor passing. There was a lot of chances that were wasted away. It just wasn't a very good game overall from either side. And in terms of the US, like I said, the passing, especially the through balls, were pretty poor. If I had $1 for about every time I saw a long ball or a through ball played to a forward and it was just hit too hard and it sailed out for a goal kick, I'd probably be a pretty rich person. And I hate to say it like that, but it was like, man, it's just, it seemed like it happened 20, 30, 40 times by the time the game ended. It just kept happening so often. And even Arlo White started to point it out in the 70th, maybe even the 80th minute. I can't remember at this point, but I was glad I wasn't the only one who was thinking it. And I have to say, the team overall looked pretty tired, which I wasn't really expecting. But then again, I probably should have expected such things because with Olympic play, you only get so many days rest between all of these games. It's like usually 2 days rest, 3 at the most, and it wears on teams after a while, especially with not too many roster spots. I mean, even with the amount of roster spots they've increased it to, only allowing 2 days rest, it's not a lot in the world of football, and I think it's really starting to wear on the US, which rightfully so, because I couldn't just have 2 days rest in a 90-minute football game. That'd be impossible. If I had to pick players that were pretty lively, I think all of them came in the form of subs, with the exception of Roosevelt. I thought Roosevelt was pretty lively for most of the game. However, I want to say Carly Lloyd and Tobin Heath, when they were subbed on, they looked extremely lively and they were super energetic. I'd say Carly Lloyd was the most energetic out of the 3 I just mentioned. Going into more possession stats, this was one of the few games where I actually didn't see the US have the ball majority of the time. For this game, they only had possession for 39% of the time, while Australia had it for 61% of the time, which good on Australia for that, because that does not happen with the US very often, where they'll give the other team a ton of possession. But on the flip side of that coin, I have to be critical of Australia because they had the ball for the majority of the game and they didn't really have a ton to show for it. By now allowing the US to have the ball, the US didn't really have a ton of chances, but like I said, Australia, nothing was really doing much for them either. So this was by and large it just was not a good game. It was so back and forth. So many balls were being passed around between defenders, especially in the second half. Not a ton of chances created, not a lot of passes were strung together, not even really good attacking runs were really made. So there's just not really much to really enjoy about this game. And I think what really crushed this game was the number of breakaways where there were giveaways. I can recall probably 3 times total between Morgan and Press where they would be one-on-one with the keeper, they'd be one-on-one with the defender, they'd have a breakaway, and they would take a poor touch and eliminate their chance, or they would just shoot the ball right at the keeper, which I think that just kind of goes off of them being extremely tired because they have played a lot of minutes in these first 3 group stage games. So I can imagine that that's part of it, but yeah, it really killed momentum because it's like those were their chances and they were just pretty much squandered. I will say though, on the plus side of this game, the US, who I've been critical of their set pieces in the past before, they had one set piece where Megan Rapinoe had a short corner to Kelly O'Hara. Kelly O'Hara had a beautiful cross and Morgan scored off of a header. But unfortunately, according to VAR, she was offside. She was probably offside by just a strand of cloth on her right shoulder, which with VAR, it happens. That's a whole nother conversation altogether. But that really stung because I think if they just would have scored that goal, that would have been all she wrote for the game, and the US would have came away with 3 points and a little bit more momentum, I think, going into this quarterfinal. But such is the way of life. And speaking of set pieces too, I gotta give it to Australia. They actually looked really, really dangerous on pretty much all of their corners and set pieces. They had a ton of those in the first half. I swear it was pretty close to double digits, if not in the double digits. And a lot of times they would get it to a point where they would either get ahead to it or the ball would kind of just be dropping, taking a couple bounces within the penalty area. And when you have that on set pieces, that's usually a pretty good sign that your team has a good chance to score if there's a loose ball in that area, and there was one instance very early on where they actually got ahead to it and it hit the crossbar. So for a while I thought Australia had a chance on those set pieces, but again, not a whole lot to show for the amount of set pieces that they had, which was in the double digits by the time the game was over. And aside from that, I thought Australia defended really, really well. Not really too much happened with Sam Kerr in this game. I was really expecting her to make some noise given how she performed the first two group stage games, but today just wasn't her day, and I really don't think it was any player's day. I can't name a single player throughout the match that I think that played particularly well. Thus, I actually am not going to give a woman of the match because I just genuinely do not think anybody played that well. Maybe I could make a case for Rose Lavelle because I thought she strung together some moments of brilliance and good passing, but even so, it just wasn't a great performance all the way around by any player on either side. At least I thought. My friends, those are just my thoughts on the USWNT national team versus Australia match. What did you make of the match? Whatever you think, you know where the comment section is.